balanced. You don't have to win all the time, and I think that's pretty clear. I'm very pleased to be here in studio. Ainsley and Will, I'm glad you're going to be with me. Ainsley, we have so much catching up to do. Will, I've been watching you on television. I feel like we've been talking, although you don't hear my questions. Ainsley, how are you?
I'm doing great. I had a wonderful vacation. It was great to be down in the state of Florida that's open now, and just surrounded by people who watch Fox all the time. Everyone came up to us at dinners and out by the pool, and they were so gracious and so lovely, and I just love that state. It was wonderful. And,
including AOC, right? She was there. Did she come up to your table?
I saw that. I saw that. She was down in Miami. I wasn't down that far south. But yeah, she was down there. It's funny because I was watching DeSantis last night talking about that. He says AOC will bash us, will lock down their states, but yet he said half a dozen governors and different congresswomen and men are coming down to Florida for their vacation. Will, you did a great job. Happy New Year. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas with your boys.
Thank you. I did. I did have a wonderful Christmas. I had a great New Year. I'm hoping you saw some of that. There's been, you know, a lot of controversy around the Fox environment. The fans, as you point out, Ainsley, love the show, love the network, love our relationship. And then immediately after that New Year's special, there was a lot of controversy because there was some sense that Pete had won the line dancing competition. But as time has gone on, and like a fine wine, that moment has aged. People are now starting to realize Pete was flashy, but I was smooth. And I think
the outfit.
that it's
the ruffles.
And it's important to set that record straight this morning. I believe, you know.
Right.
Fair and balanced.
Will, a lot of people said, yeah, he can dance, but is he going to be good on television? So we all knew you came here with mostly a dance background who adapted to this format. So you're able to go back to your roots on New Year's Eve. It was certainly something special, and it was definitely worth the price of admission.
A lot of people say, look, Will is, you know, trying to follow in the path of Brian Kilmeade, or Will is trying to follow in the path of Tucker Carlson. And so I wrote down, you know, the path, because if I'm going to follow, I need to write it down. And I did see that Tucker, for example, did Dancing with the Stars. So it's all, the plan is unfolding exactly as I had intended.
What's on your list under Brian's name? Brian, what advice do you have?
I can't wait to hear this, Will.
In your footsteps?
No, Ainsley, let him answer. That's a great question. Will, what's on your list?
See, you thought I would stumble with this, and I enjoy that. But if you really take a step back and you say, how has Will Machiavellian style organized his entire career? He looked at Brian Kilmeade, who is incredibly invested in sports, became a morning show guy, and you'd say, wow, Will really idolizes Brian Kilmeade. Wow.
All right, let's go to break. I just hit my peak. There you go, Will. Hey, let's talk meat because it's a natural transition. Because Joe Biden have a few days off. Will danced, Ainsley vacationed, and Joe Biden thought about meat. He said to myself, there is inflation, and then there's prices, and then there's meat. Horrible meat people are jacking up prices, and I have friends that tell me meat is expensive. So it's a problem when 80%, he says, of four companies control 80% of the meat market. So therefore, he's going to attack meat like Rocky did in 1976 in Rocky 1. Here's Joe talking meat.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Capitalism without competition isn't capitalism. It's exploitation. That's what we're seeing in meat and poultry and those industries now. Small, independent farmers and ranchers are being driven out of business, sometimes businesses that have been around for generations.
He said there were 4 chicken companies, 4 beef companies, 4 pork companies that monopolize the industry, and they are determining the price. And so all these small businesses, all these ranchers are going out of business because these big companies are taking over. He failed to mention the fact that truck drivers are hard to find. Gas prices, diesel fuel is through the roof right now. Labor costs are increasing because of the labor shortage. Gas prices through the roof. Cost of fertilization, Brian and Will, is up as well. So these farmers are not making as much money as they used to 10 years ago. If you ask any of them, they'll tell you that. But they're having to tack on the extra costs to you, the buyer, because they're paying more and not making as much money. But he fails to blame himself and his policies and shutting down the pipelines and causing energy prices to go up and gas prices to go up and worker shortage because he's paying people to stay home. He fails to mention any of that. He blames it on the ranchers and the farmers that are barely making any money.
Yeah, and he points out something, by the way, which you start with the truth and you build upon that a lie. The truth is beef prices are rising incredible and outpacing all other inflation. You can take a look. Beef is up almost 21%, pork up 17%, chicken up 9%. As you pointed out, Ainsley, it's what he doesn't talk about. What he fails to mention, coffee is up 7%. Of course, we know oil and gas is up incredibly as well. So that would seem to suggest there's something beyond antitrust needed to attack inflation. Hey, look, on Fox and Friends, we have interviewed small ranchers and farmers who have pointed out that there is a constriction in the supply chain in meat processing, and it has allowed extraordinary power to the meat processors. But let's be clear. Biden isn't focused on that because it's going to help solve inflation. He's focused on that because it's a distraction and a place to shift blame away from an economic inflation at large throughout our society. And if you want to know, if you want an illustration of just how disingenuous this entire thing is, take a look at how he described, as Brian alluded to, how he found out about beef prices.
Yeah.
Watch.
In my kitchen yesterday, and there's a sunroom off the kitchen, and my wife was there with her sister and a good friend named Mary Ann, and she was saying, do you realize it's over $5 for a pound of hamburger meat? $5? Well, this is partly, you know, the pound of beef today costs $5 compared to less than $4 before the pandemic.
Exactly. So go to your sunroom, ask your wife to bring over a friend, and then find out what's bothering them, and then make it a policy. What could possibly be wrong with that? Unbelievable that he used that as an example. My sense is they didn't load the prompter with that. You guys would know better. But Larry Summers said something, as you know, Treasury Secretary for Barack Obama. He says the emerging claim that antitrust can combat inflation, because he wants to give grants to small meat producers. Antitrust can combat inflation reflects science denial, sarcasm. There are many areas like transitory inflation that where serious economists differ. Antitrust as an anti-inflation strategy is not one of them. That's a guy on your team. Somebody else who does meat for a living, the best in the business, Pat LaFrida, joined Fox and Friends First earlier and says, here's the reality. Watch.
What the president wants to do is to create competition. And it wants our farmers, our growers, to get more money for every dollar spent. Then there needs to be more demand for domestic product. Labor and fuel have been the two main reasons that meat is up. So we all know fuel needs to come down. It's still $1 a gallon more on average, higher than 2019. But labor is a major problem. Just throwing money at a problem is not going to solve it.
That's coming from someone in the meat industry. Joe Biden can sit in Capitol Hill or can sit in the White House or can sit in his sunroom and talk to people about prices going up. That's coming from the meat industry. The reason is gas prices are up, labor costs are up, nobody wants to work. You talk to any business person, they're having a hard time finding workers. Joe Biden doesn't even know what "Let's Go Brandon" means, and he's finding out on Sunday that the meat industry is experiencing higher prices. I mean, he probably doesn't do his grocery shopping like we all do. We all went to the grocery store over the holiday. Prices are through the roof. I read an article over the weekend that wood right now, people are buying more wood right now, firewood, because they're trying to heat their homes with fires instead of cranking up the heat because it's so expensive. He's out of touch. He needs to have a reality check. And Secretary Blinken's putting out this playlist on Spotify. Meanwhile, we have foreign policy issues that he needs to be focused on, and we're going to talk about that coming up. Will?
Yeah, I don't know what was in the prompter. I don't know if he was trying to appear folksy by telling the story of his neighbor, but he's clearly, to your point, Ainsley, out of touch. And he's not going to solve inflation by attacking big meat. By the way, big meat, just the latest villain in the story of the Biden administration. I don't think it's replacing the unvaxxed, but I think it's going to compete with the unvaxxed for about a week. We're going to focus on big meat, the bad guy. Up next, though, Governor DeSantis is demanding the president release life-saving treatments as the country sees a surge in COVID cases. Plus, the State Department is facing a handful of international crises, but that's not stopping them from promoting the playlist that Ainsley just referenced. It's packed with Olivia Rodrigo, I'm not familiar, and Taylor Swift. The bizarre tweets about Anthony Blinken's Spotify coming up. U.S. troops in the Middle East are coming under attack overnight. Air Defense Forces striking down 2 drones packed with explosives. targeting an Iraqi base housing American forces just west of Baghdad. It's the second attack of its kind in 24 hours, as Iran and its allies mark the 2-year anniversary of the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani. And then today, the Chicago Teachers Union is set to hold a vote on a return to remote learning. As the mayor says, children need to be in the classroom. The union is gearing up to walk out tomorrow over COVID-19 safety concerns. Several teachers unions across the country, including Connecticut and Massachusetts, are also demanding a halt to in-person learning.
Chance to draft again. Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning, or Ben Roethlisberger. Who do you pick? They were in the same draft.
In order. In order. Ben Roethlisberger 1, Phillip Rivers 2, Eli Manning 3.
Interesting, because the Giants had Rivers and flipped him for Eli. Very interesting. Yeah. We'll talk about that with Ainsley in depth a little bit later. Ainsley, I'll leave you for the next hour.
I was watching that Jets game.
I will be tuning in for that segment.
I was watching the Jets game. I was texting with Joel, who's our stage manager at the studio. And Joel, as we know, he wears a green sweatshirt every day, the Jets hat. And he said, don't jinx this, Ainsley. He said, don't jinx this. And then you saw the end of the game.
You did. So you blew the game.
Good. I blew the game. I blew the game. Sorry, Jets fans.
Right. And by the way, we have shots of Joel. Joel left the game exactly like Antonio Brown. He took his shirt off and threw it and just went outside in 22-degree weather.
Brown, and I'm proud of Joel. I would love Joel. When Joel wants to walk off the set because of Brian's behavior, I just hope he takes off his jersey and throws it at the camera and leaves in the same fashion as Antonio Brown.
That is the way we all should leave. And just like that, they will not fire Joel. They'll just take it under consultation because Antonio Brown is not fired right now.
Right. Well, I'm keeping my shirt on, Brian.
Weird.
All right. Thank you for a change. Meanwhile, 18 minutes after the hour, in just 2 hours from now, President Biden will speak on the Omicron spread as the U.S. sets a new global record with over 1 million new cases. Mark Meredith joins us from Washington with more. Hey, Mark.
Brian, good morning to you. A White House official says this afternoon the president is going to be updating the country on the federal response to the pandemic. He's also expected to lay out where government resources are going and once, of course, again, urge people to get vaccinated. The administration is certainly under pressure to ramp up testing with rapid tests selling out at drugstores, and we've seen a number of businesses scale back on having employees return to work. Meantime, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who's a potential 2024 challenger of President Biden, is also accusing the administration of refusing to disperse additional monoclonal antibody treatments. The governor says the administration is holding back from his state and others.
We saved thousands of lives by providing that treatment. So that should have been replicated in all these other states. But instead, what Biden and his cronies have done, they've seized control of all the monoclonal antibodies.
Department of Health and Human Services that says the government has and will continue to supply Florida with therapeutics that can help improve patient outcomes, reduce stress on healthcare facilities, and save lives. We'll keep watching that one. On Monday, the FDA authorized booster shots of Pfizer's vaccine for kids aged 12 to 15. It's recommending doses be taken 5 months after they get their second shot. But some medical experts are criticizing the FDA's decision here, arguing that the agency basically was rushing this approval process, and some doctors even arguing that vaccines that are already on the market are providing kids enough protection. Will, Ainsley, and Brian, back to you guys.
All right. Thank you so much, Mark. Yeah, we've had these monoclonals for more than a year. Where is Operation Warp Speed on this? Dr. Siegel's calling it Operation Snail Speed. We've known about this. They should be ready. These states should be getting what they need. Ron DeSantis says he wants 40,000 monoclonal infusions per week. That's what he's requesting. He says they're getting some, but they're not getting enough, and he's asking for 2 to 3 times the amount. Dr. Oz says these antiviral pills, you can't find them. He says that they reduce complications by 90%. Monoclonals are hard to find, as we've talked about. The home testing, not readily available. You used to be able to get those before everyone went away for the holiday, for the last 2 weeks or whatever it was, for Christmas and for New Year's. And then everyone started getting Omicron. Then you had to get the home test. Then schools said you have to have a PCR test, and the home test will work in many of the districts if you can find them. The problem is you go to all these drugstores and they say, we are out of tests. They have signs on the front doors. In order to get a test, you have to wait in line, some places 5 hours. There's a testing center outside of my building, and the line was wrapped all the way around the building because kids need tests to get back to school. People can't find what they need, and whatever happened to, if you need them, you can get them. This is America. Will?
Yeah, Ainsley, so you're pointing out two categories that have been sacrificed at the altar of one singular topic, and that is the vaccine. Not only are you not allowed to talk about therapeutics, therapeutics have been completely vilified over the past year and a half. We have no interest in helping sick people. In fact, we villainize sick people, certainly if they were not vaccinated. So that's the topic when it comes to monoclonal antibodies. It's fallen at the altar of the vaccine because you're not allowed to talk about therapeutics. But the more important one that I want to talk about for just a moment, Ainsley, is the testing you brought up. So right now, it's my belief, Ainsley, that we're suffering from a pandemic of positive tests.
Antibodies. Then we're armed up for the next variant that comes through, which is going to be lighter. Why don't they admit that? Number two, the vaccines don't stop the disease. They just blunt some of the symptoms, perhaps. There's no even evidence that it's less likely that we're going to spread it if we have it. So there's no idea why we're firing everyone with mandate because your mandates, because they don't do what you want to do. So it's creating more tension in this country. It's gutting our military, gutting our healthcare workers, gutting our cops, gutting our firefighters, soon to be corrections. It is nuts what's happening right now. And then we find out something we knew all along. Cloth masks don't work. We find out that yesterday from Scott Gottlieb, heard all around the world. Anthony Fauci, of course, disagrees. Big difference. So we have these kids sitting there like mummies in their second-grade classroom wearing something that's doing absolutely no good. And if the teachers had their own way, they wouldn't be in the classrooms at all. But I digress. Let's move on and talk about something equally as agonizing, and that is we have so many challenges overseas right now. Iran tried to attack us twice within 24 hours. Thankfully, the Iraqi air defense and our own were able to knock down a few drones. This ongoing crisis in Russia is something I've really seen in 25 years. And then you have the constant stress of China and the fact that our military has been gutted because of the ridiculous mandates that are now COVID-riddled Secretary of Defense has listened to the president and put on his military. And then where's our Secretary of State? He, who has a band called, which he calls Wonk Rock, has released his playlist on Spotify. Your witness, Ainsley.
Yeah, so State Department has tweeted 8 times over the last month promoting this. I don't know why he's doing this. Is he trying to connect to the younger generation? But we've got so much going on as far as serious foreign policy decisions. And you're right, Brian, I hear you. Russia preparing to invade Ukraine, working with China and Iran, the mullahs in Iran, talking about killing President Trump, talking about killing Mike Pompeo. You have China, who continues to invade Taiwan's airspace. Afghanistan, how many of our troops are still behind enemy lines, or I should say our allies, people who helped us over there, and we just say, you're on your own. And they're focused on Spotify and a playlist and Taylor Swift. This is the tweet from Steve Scalise that I think you'll find interesting. He says, I'm sure the Americans still stranded in Afghanistan will appreciate having this playlist to listen to as they're forced to live under Taliban rule. This is how unserious this administration is. They're so out of touch, as we were saying before. They shouldn't be promoting this when we have so many things going on. And how do you think our military reacts to this? You go to Virginia Beach. You ask them if they think this is okay for the Secretary of State to be promoting a Spotify 8 times over the last month when our troops or our people were stranded in Afghanistan. Will?
Fundamentally unserious, Ainsley, fundamentally. Molly Hemingway was on Fox News Primetime last night, and that's her diagnosis, that's her analysis, that's her indictment. Watch.
Afghanistan was just a horrible thing that the entire country feels dishonor over. And weakness, like the weakness that the Biden administration has kind of presented on a platter, can be provocative. You might remember that Putin was not invading countries during the Trump era. He took advantage of, neocon foreign policy, basically, to do his previous incursions, whether that was under Obama or now he seems to be threatening with Biden. He also, at the tail end of the George W. Bush presidency, tried that too. We have really serious issues, and the State Department keeps pushing out this Spotify list, and it just makes you nervous because they're not just doing a bad job. They keep doing these things that are not serious at all.
Yeah, and trying too hard. I could give you a lot of nouns to describe a guy that tries too hard, but doesn't pay attention to what's actually important in life. And now that's what we're run by. People that are tryhards while ignoring substance. So, it's not just the publishing 8 times the Spotify list. Hey, Tony Blinken's 59. He's got a band called, Brian said, Wonk Rock. I didn't know it was called Wonk Rock. And by the way, look, I don't know, man. At some point, you stop keeping up. Are you really listening to Olivia Rodrigo? Or are you trying too hard, Tony? I mean, are you really listening to Taylor Swift? Or are you trying too hard, Tony? I got to tell you, I'm younger, and I stopped my musical evolution some 10 years ago. I'm pretty much listening to the same stuff that I was listening to a decade ago. So I'm having a hard time believing this 59-year-old's like, ooh, the new Olivia Rodrigo song's out. Make sure I download that and put it on my playlist.
It's so true.
He's listening to Boston More Than the Feeling. There was a very good album. The music brings people together. It transcends borders. Everything else might otherwise divide us. That is one of the reasons that they put out the playlist, to bring people together. Remember, this is the man that was in the Hamptons because he guaranteed us Afghanistan was not going to fall at any time soon or over the weekend. It fell quicker than 2 days. It fell in 1 day. He was in the Hamptons making phone calls to a president of Afghanistan who'd already left the country. That's how embarrassing he is. And that's why John McCain was so against his nomination during the Obama years, and now we're stuck with him as Secretary of State, an unserious guy with multiple crises on his hands. But let's move ahead. We got 2 hours and 2 minutes to fill. 4 of the 11 counts against her. Holmes charged for crimes related to misleading investors and patients about the capabilities of her blood testing technology. She was found guilty on 1 count of conspiracy, 3 counts of fraud, carrying a maximum penalty of 20 years per charge. She's expected to appeal the University of Memphis is reportedly offering faculty $3,000 bonuses for, quote, infusing equity into course material. The Free Beacon reporting the university will offer professors $1,500 stipend when they redesign their curriculum and another $1,500 when they actually teach it. Memphis will reportedly only pick 50 to 20 professors for the program, which will begin, sadly, in the upcoming spring semester. And those are your headlines. Now I will gracefully toss it over to Ainsley.
Surprised that's happening in Memphis.
Unbelievable.
Thanks so much. I know, right? Thanks, Brian. Well, if Democrats want to stand a chance in 2022, they need to take a page from New York City Mayor Eric Adams' book, at least according to our next guest, who is laying out a litmus test for candidates who want to avoid a 2022 wipeout. And here now is former Miami Beach Mayor Philip Levine. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
Good morning. So you are a self-made success story. You ran a city like a moderate. You were the mayor there for 4 years, and you ran for governor of Florida. And you're looking at what's happening in New York with Eric Adams. So many Democrats are losing. We saw what happened in Virginia. Why do you say the Democratic Party needs to take a page out of his book?
Because I think what's going on right now, Ainsley, is that Eric Adams has come out and he ran in a very progressive primary, but he ran as a radical centrist, which, of course, I love that term. And he came out and he said, listen, I'm pro-police, I'm pro-business, I'm also pro-people, but I'm not going to live in a city that's running wild. And he won. He won the primary, and now he's moving forward. And I think that he serves as a model for Democrats across the country, because this year looks very challenging. So my op-ed basically laid out a kind of like a framework I believe will help Democrats get to the promised land. And we need a healthy Democratic Party, and this is a chance for them to have great success.
Okay, I read your op-ed, and when I read the questions you say Democrats unequivocally need to answer yes to, here are these 5 questions. They need to say yes to funding the police, yes to securing our borders, only U.S. citizens should vote, yes that parents should participate in school curriculum and be against CRT, and yes, disavow socialism and support capitalism. Isn't that the Republican Party? Why are you still a Democrat if you want to say yes to all of those?
Absolutely not, because I think being a compassionate capitalist is a great road to go on. It has nothing to do with being Republican or Democrat. It's about selling a product and knowing your customer. I mean, think about this. Unfortunately, we don't want the Democratic Party to go the way of Blockbuster Video. Now, there are those that can say you only can buy 8-track tapes and that's the way we're going to go, but we know what happened to Blockbuster. The Democrats need to be selling a product that appeals to the center of the party. Now, if there are Republicans that want to find a home in the Democratic Party, that's fantastic. But we need to get back to really, truly being in the middle of the road for all Americans in order to win. Now, think of this, Ainsley. Progressives can win districts, but centrists win states. And in order to become president or to win statewide, you need to win a state.
I agree with you. I think that's why Joe Biden won. I thought people thought he would be more moderate and more centrist, but he hasn't been. What are you going to do about the AOCs of your party?
Well, I think what's going on is this. Look what Eric Adams did. Even during the primary, he was able to confront the socialist wing of the party. He's not saying I don't believe in some of your ideas, but what he's saying is that's not the direction that we're going to go in. Now, listen, everyone has great ideas, but the reality is that we need to be able to get to the middle. And I think that Eric Adams has done that, and I think the proof will be in the pudding as he moves forward. And, being a mayor, there's, as you've seen previously, and I wrote in my op-ed, Bill de Blasio was the greatest gift Florida's ever had. I mean, I used to say that he needs to run for a third term because it's so fantastic for our state, because all the amount of people that are coming here. Eric Adams is the worst thing for Florida because he's going to turn New York around.
I hope you're right. We're waiting just a few days in, so we'll see. Thank you so much, Mayor. Great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. 37 minutes after the top of the hour, and coming up next, the Chicago Teachers Union prepares a vote on remote learning.
Governor Ron DeSantis is getting the last word.
When you have people like that Congresswoman who rip Florida because we're open, who say you need lockdown policies, and then the first chance they get, they come running down to my state. If I had $1 for every lockdown politician that's done that over the last 2 years, I'd be awfully wealthy right now.
Tomi Lahren, Fox Nation host. Listen, come on. This is too easy. I think you look at this storyline. I'm just kind of waiting for the wind-up, so I'm just going to throw it out there very softly and let you knock it out of the park.
Well, listen, AOC loves Florida, and there are a few people that love freedom more than those that spend their career trying to hamper it for others. But Ron DeSantis is exactly right. There are so many liberals that not only want a vacation in free states like Florida, but are fleeing and moving to states like Florida. The numbers don't lie. But I think the best part of this whole thing here is that AOC claims that if we criticize her for her blatant hypocrisy, it must mean that we want to date her. Now, I can tell you this. I certainly do not want to date AOC, and I have a feeling Governor Ron DeSantis doesn't want to date AOC either. And we don't even mind if she comes to great free states like Florida or even here in Tennessee. We just appreciate it if she would advocate for freedom in her home state and her home district, because I believe that freedom is best for all of us. Maybe she can take a little bit of that Florida sunshine and freedom on home with her to her district, and maybe even to Washington, D.C.
I love the fact that both Kevin and I had the same question for you, Tomi. It was basically go. Go, Tomi. But what does a response like that from AOC tell you about the kind of person that we're dealing with? When you're getting at a political discussion and they say, oh, you're just like that because you want to date me. That just seems bizarre to me, Tomi.
It is. It's also a quite odd statement for someone who is a self-proclaimed feminist to make. If you criticize her, it must mean that you want to date her. I think that's the opposite of what the feminists talk about, equality and not sexualizing women. But, hey, maybe I just don't understand modern-day feminism. That could be the case. It's very hard to understand these days. But these leaders like AOC and others, they're simply projecting. They're simply gaslighting. They know that they've been caught. Instead of owning up to it, taking some accountability, they want to deflect and then make some bizarre statement about how we feel about them. Listen, I think she's a hypocrite. I think she's a beautiful lady. Certainly don't want to date her, though.
30 seconds left for us here, Tomi. I want to get you to weigh in on the Governor Cuomo circumstance. He's been cleared, essentially, of causing 15,000 or more deaths in the state of New York. In the time we have left, they're not going to pursue him. What do you think?
Yeah, the nursing home Grim Reaper. I can't imagine how devastating this is for so many family members that lost their loved ones. But I think what really is happening here is two things. I think it's great to be a liberal with friends in high places. We call that liberal privilege. But I also think that this was an attempt to safeguard other governors who did much the same thing with their nursing home debacles. He's getting away with this one. I have a feeling, though, the Democrats at some point are going to have to own up to it, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Nobody hits a time cue quite like one Tomi Lahren. She nails it every time. Watch Final Thoughts with Tomi Lahren only on Fox Nation. We love Tomi Tuesdays. We appreciate you being here, our friend. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Thank you, guys.
And with that, Mr. Cork, one more day of the Man Show. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Can't wait for it. With that, Fox and Friends starts right now.
The Biden administration not mincing its words when it comes to the meat industry.
Capitalism without competition isn't capitalism. It's exploitation. That's what we're seeing in meat.
The FDA is authorizing Pfizer booster shots for kids as young as 12.
The FDA knew that the experts had concerns, so they decided to not convene them and circumvent them altogether. This is unprecedented.
The Chicago Teachers Union will vote on returning to remote learning.
as a parent, I'm sick of it. This is just a failure for the future of our children.
State Department getting brutally mocked for repeatedly promoting the Secretary of State's Spotify playlist.
It just makes you nervous because they're not just doing a bad job. They keep doing these things that are not serious at all.
First and goal. Ben, quick throw. Touchdown, Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger gets his goodbye at Heinz Field.